The last several years have been some of the busiest when it comes to the release of large AAA samurai games. That is, samurai games made by sizable and popular developers in the industry. Never before have pre-modern Japanese enthusiasts and gamers been so blessed to have so many big releases. From the Ghost series to Rise of the Ronin to even Assassin's Creed Shadows and more, we are truly living in a new age of samurai and ninja games. Because yes, a lot of these games also incorporate large stereotypical aspects we have come to associate with the shinobi. This begs the question, however, how did we get here? Samurai and ninja games have been around since the early 1980s, if not earlier. And although there are many games we could look at, I think it is important to examine the games that have made the biggest impact over the years, so that we can chart how samurai and ninja games, at times separate but also together, have evolved as a genre or genres over time. In many cases, the big series that are still around today, or at least the games that people still bring up on a regular basis. And while I'm focused on looking at the history of samurai games, for ninja/shinobi games, I'm happy to be joined by author and historical researcher Anthony Cummins. Every section in this video about ninja games was written by him, although recorded by me. This video was actually originally his idea for a collaboration, however we expanded it to not just be about ninja games but more broadly samurai and ninja games together.
My name is Anthony Cummins, and I have spent 2 decades researching the ninja and the samurai. Today I want to talk about the ninja in video games and the legacy it has left us. Unfortunately, I am not a massive gamer myself, so maybe you can help me in the comments below, but I would like to take you through some of my personal favourites. I am also the author of the Book of Ninja, the Book of Samurai and the Book of Bushido, and I will leave a pinned comment for you to find your way to my channel if you would like.
Now, before we completely dive in, we should do a bit of a history lesson just to set the stage. How was it that samurai and ninja games got so popular and really became their own genre or genres over the years? Well, for Japan, it's not hard to understand. For a country that had so much to do in terms of the foundation of video game history, building so many of the iconic consoles and studios throughout the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, it only makes sense that they would lean into their own interesting facets of history to create historically driven games. It would be like European studios making games about medieval Europe. It just makes sense given the familiarity and fascination. But how did that interest then transcend borders to capture audiences across the world? Well, for a lot of people, films, TV shows, and books are really what did a lot of the early legwork to get audiences intrigued. For a lot of people, one of the first really big moments which sparked an interest in Japan was the James Bond film You Only Live Twice, released in 1967. This was a Bond film which primarily took place in Japan and featured many iconic details about the country. Notably, it portrayed ninja in the very stereotypical way we have come to envision them as stealthy, acrobatic assassins dressed in black. Now, it should be noted, of course, that this portrayal of ninja is not accurate to the real concept of the historical shinobi, and although we could dive deeper into the real history of shinobi in this video, we have a whole series on that for you to check out that I will link down below. Yet after You Only Live Twice, Western audiences were introduced to flashy and more interesting aspects of Japan, and they certainly wanted more. The 1975 film The Elite Killer, starring James Caan and Robert Duvall, also brought with it a heavy portrayal of ninja. However, 1980 went above and beyond with the release of the famous TV miniseries Shogun, based off of the popular novel by James Clavell. The series brought samurai and ninja to people's TVs all around the world. And with the coming rise of home video, many people were gaining access to Japanese samurai films that had been around for decades. All of a sudden, films like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo were not just films you could only see when they were occasionally screened at cinemas, but soon enough you could rent and watch them anytime, causing the interest to only continue to rise. We have to remember, the 1980s also brought with them the release of Kurosawa's final 2 great samurai epics, Kagemusha and Ran. Of course, the 1980s would also see the release of many more flashy and often low-budget attempts to cash in on the samurai and ninja hype, yet by this point we can also start to see the rise of another form of media: video games. Now people could play out their own role in a game set in pre-modern Japan, in games that focused on both samurai and ninja. It would be a whole new world as new genres were born, from arcades to home consoles, genres which continue to this very day. So, let's jump in and examine the evolution of samurai and ninja games by taking a look at some of the biggest releases and series over time, coming up to this very day. Let's start off though back in the 1980s with an absolute classic, Nobunaga's Ambition, original release 1983. One of the earliest samurai games was actually a strategy game, the first in what would become a long-running series still pumping out new entries today. This was Nobunaga's Ambition, or Nobunaga no Yabu. Published by Koei, the original Nobunaga's Ambition was first released in 1983 for Japanese home PCs, although it would later get an updated re-release in the 1990s, yet many more sequels were to follow. The series is best known for its in-depth strategic yet also story-driven approach to portraying the iconic Sengoku period. In fact, the series often gets called historical simulation for obvious reasons. Its extreme focus on the real history. You can spend hours going through all of the unique descriptions for each real historical officer in the game, or wear yourself out trying to unlock each unique cutscene for historical battles. But besides that, what these games offer are complex clan management and diplomatic situations, coupled with intense battles involving thousands of troops and special abilities from your commanders. In many ways, we can compare this series to Total War. However, I would have to say Nobunaga's Ambition is far more in-depth, even if the battles don't quite stack up to Total War, yet they are still very fun. Koei has had over 40 years and over 16 titles to perfect their systems, and although each game does not always capitalize on the successes that came before, we still have to respect the creativity of the developers behind the scenes, especially to try new things. For example, one of the most recent well-received entries in the series is that of Sphere of Influence, which set a new, high-polished standard for the series. And while its follow-up, Taishi, took a few steps back with a bit more of a clunky approach to a number of new systems they attempted to implement, things got right back on track with Awakening, which brings back many of the core mechanics from Sphere of Influence to make what I consider to be one of the greatest samurai strategy games ever made. Although numerous other samurai strategy games have come and gone over the years, one thing is for sure. Nobunaga's Ambition is here to stay and remains the gold standard for grand strategy and historical simulation in the Sengoku period. Next up, we have our first ninja game entry, Shinobi, released in 1987. Shinobi is the quintessential ninja game. Surprisingly, Sega decided to market it with the more archaic and less popular name, Shinobi, instead of the well-known Ninja, but with great rewards. This game became a staple of the 1980s video game arcade circuit and spawned a series which continues to this day. The original game is set in the modern-day West, against a backdrop of gang-ruled America. Joe Musashi has to stop Zed, a criminal organization bent on kidnapping the children of Joe's ninja clan. Joe to the rescue has to traverse multiple scroll-along levels to discover his long-lost clan members. He crawls in a classical ninja style, throwing out his shuriken and even using a rocket launcher he picks up from fallen enemies as he jumps between two levels, dodging bullets and flying boomerang scimitars until he reaches the boss at the end of each level. Players in distress can hit their magical power button for help in overcrowded situations, and there might be a few older players among us who will want to cry out Hadia. One of the greatest aspects to come out of the game, and maybe the most memorable, is the bonus stage music and switch in camera angle. 1987 was a slap bang in the height of ninja mania in the West, with shokasugi movies such as Pray for Death and Ninja Domination being forefront in people's minds at the time. Shinobi to this day has a legacy of games which have followed it, making it a staple of the ninja game genre and has no signs of stopping. And although recent releases have continued to modernize its systems and storyline, they still all contain that same original Shinobi DNA. The next ninja series we're going to look at made its first appearance in 1988 with the release of Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden, Shadow Warriors, or even just Ninja in the US as it was known, was a classic of the arcade era. Its awesome opening of a slow blade in the rain, the glowing eyes of a somewhat campily dressed ninja, along with dramatic storms and rowing boats of turbulent waves, still holds a place in many people's hearts. Your mission was to save the world from an evil cult as you smashed through literally everything on screen that was not obviously background art. Hockey mask, horror-style villains, and punks wearing goggles and other biker-like apparel stand in your way, but if you keep an eye out, you could also throw certain objects to reveal hidden items. There would be multiple 2D releases for the series, until it would go through a complete revamp in the early 2000s, obviously moving away from its original side-scrolling format to a more modern 3-dimensional playstyle. And new entries have continued to roll out, continuing the new story of Ryu Hayabusa, keeping the series popular for decades after its initial release, with its most recent entry even coming just this past year. However, the series today looks unrecognizable to what it originally resembled. We now move forward 10 years to look at one of the classic fighting games of the samurai genre, Bushido Blade. As far as fighting games go, it seems clear that one of the greatest within the samurai setting is that of Bushido Blade, a dueling game released for the PlayStation in 1997. Although there have been many fighting games released over the years incorporating samurai in various forms, it's hard to escape the overall impact of Bushido Blade due to one thing, the most important thing for a game like this: its combat. Bushido Blade famously utilized a combat system which was simple, yet also in-depth. It saw players utilizing a range of weapons and different types of attacks to either cripple or instantly kill opponents. The game has no health bars, thus fights can evolve into intense chess matches where both fighters circle each other, waiting for one to make the wrong move and pay the price. It's like the duel in the film Harakiri. It's not just two men wildly swinging at each other, but two men who know the danger of each other's blades. Each swing matters, each swing is calculated, and they spend more time avoiding each other than actually going in for the kill, which makes it all the more satisfying when an opening finally does arrive to deal the final blow. Although Bushido Blade was certainly not the first fighting game to incorporate samurai, it stands out as easily one of the best thanks to its innovative systems which are still talked about today. There was a Bushido Blade 2 which was released a year later, but it sadly did not improve on much, and it's been said to have actually taken a few steps back overall. In the almost 3 decades it has been since the release of Bushido Blade, sadly nothing has come close in regard to a true samurai fighting game with this type of intense and realistic combat, other than games like Hellish Court, which have taken similar systems and have done wonders, but we are still waiting for a game to return to Japan with the same level of detail. This is why Bushido Blade is still so talked about today, and will be until we finally get a proper successor. Our next ninja game came out 1 year later in 1998 with Tenchu Stealth Assassins. In 1998, cities around the world were dappled in dramatic billboard posters, Japanese-style paintings showing one of the coolest adverts of one of the most popular consoles, the PlayStation, and the game, Tenchu Stealth Assassins. Gone was the 8-bit music, the scrolling left and right, jumping in 2 dimensions. This was earth-shattering. With a memorable and now nostalgic soundtrack, Tenchu allowed you to move around the screen, in and out of buildings, over rooftops, and to creep in the shadows. Instead of outright mayhem and carnage, in this game the idea was to be unseen, to not kill the guards, and to perform at a master level by achieving a high stealth rating. By dipping in and out of your equipment list, you could use classic items like smoke bombs, shuriken throwing stars, caltrops, and even some well-researched objects such as poisoned rice. The game was a phenomenal success and spawned sequels, the 2000 Tenchu 2 Birth of the Stealth Assassins and the 2003 edition of Wrath of Heaven, but after a decade, the steam ran out and now it sits in limbo. The final 2 major releases were Tenchu Z for the Xbox 360 in 2006 and Tenchu Shadow Assassins for the Wii and PSP in 2008. Since then, there have only been rumors of a new game, but nothing has had yet to materialize. Up next, we move to the year 2000 with the release of the original Shogun Total War. The year 2000 would bring an entirely new experience within the samurai game genre, this being the first ever installment of the long-running Total War series. The original Shogun Total War was an innovative game for its time, combining a turn-based campaign with epic and in-depth real-time battles. Never before had a strategy game had quite the level of sophistication in depicting battles, from offering a wide range of unit types, each with their own nuances, to then being able to utilize them most effectively through careful planning and moment-to-moment tactical decision-making. The core campaign was set during the Sengoku period. There would even be a DLC later release which focused on the earlier Mongol invasions of Japan in the 13th century. Shogun was of course only a starting point, and the series would go on to have many more fantastic entries, from ancient Rome to medieval Europe to the Napoleonic Wars. However, in 2011, the series would return back to Japan for the much anticipated Shogun 2. To this day, Shogun 2 is widely considered to be the most polished and perfected historical Total War title of all time. It features perhaps the greatest battle systems of any historical Total War title, with a wide range of unit types, each with their own unique stats, abilities, upgrades, and animations. From lines of spearmen that held, archers and gunners who shredded advancing soldiers, cavalry that crashed into enemies and caused havoc, generals who inspired troops, heroes who fought with unmatched prowess, and so much more. Each battle is an intricate chess match using some of the best systems Total War would ever come to offer. For campaigns, the game would altogether come to deliver 3, if we are also including Fall of the Samurai, which itself can be purchased as a standalone game. From the core Sengoku Jidai campaign, which offers up to 12 playable clans, to the Rise of the Samurai Genpei War campaign, to yes, the Fall of the Samurai campaign set around the Boshin War. There is just so much to choose from, and so much which has never been done before in any other samurai game and has not been done since. And while many details are pretty ahistorical, and the campaigns are much more simplistic compared to that of Nobunaga's Ambition, I think it is fair to say that nothing beats the presentation and intensity of Total War battles. And I know many would likely argue that there are no finer historical Total War battles than those in Shogun 2. Next up, we move into 2002 with another absolute classic, the Way of the Samurai series. These games might be regarded as actually a bit of a hidden gem. Of course, they're not actually that hidden if you owned a PlayStation in the early 2000s or later even an Xbox 360 like I did. The Way of the Samurai series were action role-playing open-world games, which, as far as samurai games went, was pretty unique for this time. The majority of these games are set in the Edo period, barring Way of the Samurai 3, my personal favorite, which is set in the Sengoku period. What really sets these games apart, aside from awesome customization and great combat mechanics, were their storylines focused heavily on player choice. Every action you take, every choice you make, every NPC you kill, every word you say has an impact on how your story will go and what ending you might wind up at. For example, Way of the Samurai 3 has over 20 different possible endings. That is crazy to think about, especially compared to games today. Of course, it should be said that the actual story for each game was by no means long, and you could easily finish a run of each game within a couple hours if you really wanted to. However, the fun comes in with all the replayability, coupled with side content which you can grind out for hours, and even take rewards with you into your next playthrough. There's even a system which essentially gives the game its name, where at the end of each playthrough you are given a score to see how true of a heroic samurai you were, which is funny because you will get negative points for being a jerk, which plenty of samurai were. The final release for the series, Way of the Samurai 4, came out in 2011, and sadly we have not seen another one since, besides the vastly different Katana Kami made by the same company. It's just a shame given their uniqueness within the genre. Never before have we had any samurai games like the Way of the Samurai series, and never again have we come close to having anything like them since, despite the fact that at times Rise of the Ronin does feel a bit close. Next up we have one of the most iconic ninja series there are, the Naruto games. It would be remiss if we did not speak of Naruto. Arriving in Japan just as the millennium came, it has now been over 25 years. Naruto is not really just a ninja game but an institution. Starting as a manga comic in 1999, it has become an animated TV series, computer games, and novelizations. Naruto has a well-researched and layered cultural foundation. While it is far away from historical ninja and their history, it does contain many elements of Japanese culture and aspects of ninja lore, or maybe folklore. From foxes with many tails to different skills of jutsus, Naruto features many of the ninja cliché elements, such as kunai, the kuji slashes and hand signs, and the idea of ninja clans at war with each other. What it does do differently is add color to the ninja world. Most often ninja games are dark and sinister, their backgrounds shadowed while the energy hits and slashes of the swords are neon flashes, for example Ninja Gaiden 4. But here in Naruto, A rich color exists, even harkening back to more colorful pre-Edo period and pre-Japanese Zen aesthetics. Naruto stands out from all other ninja games, but it has so many incarnations that it would be hard to define it as a single form. In many cases, Naruto games are intense fighting games, but there are others which do break that mold. They can feel more like extensions of post-Kurosawa Japanese cinema, such as films like Shinobi from 2005, with its setup and internal ninja struggles. However, both are product of the same generation and same evolution. No matter what the inspiration of such a 180 turn on the classic ninja model, the legacy of Naruto seems to remain, and its legion of fans continue to support it. Next up, we move into one of my personal favorites, the Samurai Warriors series. By 2004, we would get yet another completely unique entry into the genre with the release of the first Samurai Warriors. Samurai Warriors was of course an offshoot of Koei Tecmo's mainline series Dynasty Warriors, which itself is set during the famous Three Kingdoms period of ancient China. Samurai Warriors, on the other hand, is set during Japan's iconic Sengoku period and involves many of the famous figures of the age. Now, I could just make a standalone video talking about the evolution of the Samurai Warriors series itself because it has changed a ton over the years, and it is a series which I did devote a whole video to reviewing, but for the sake of simplicity, what you should know is that for the most part each entry has followed a similar format to their Dynasty Warriors counterparts. An epic story of the period being told from a multitude of perspectives. Each game sees you battling through the greatest battles of the Warring Age as you take on hundreds of enemy soldiers and unique officers. Now, yes, the game is a bit more on the wild side of things, as each of the characters comes with their own unique weapon, which some can be pretty crazy and out of left field, while others are more grounded. Additionally, the game also features powerful Muso attacks which can slow down time and deal devastating damage to all those around you. So no, these games are not trying to be grounded by any means. And in many cases, the battles you fight are not portrayed historically that well either, but that can also be the fun of it. The games are not trying to be 100% accurate, but loosely follow the story of the Sengoku period while leaning into many of the romanticizations and overglorifications that have arisen over the years. I've described these games as more of a caricature of the period, which I think is still a pretty good way to look at it for the sake of a fun game. Now, the series is not totally unique in that regard either, as another series, Sengoku Basara, by Capcom is pretty close. But for me, Samurai Warriors will always be number one for the samurai hack and slash genre. As a final note, what also needs to be mentioned are the awesome Samurai Warriors Empires titles. These games step away from the story-driven approach to instead let you tell your own story by leading any number of historical clans, or even your own custom clan, to conquer Japan. The Empires games are some of my favorite samurai gaming experiences of all time, with Samurai Warriors 2 Empires being a huge standout. The Empires titles incorporate elements of politics, diplomacy, and strategy into them that are not present in the base games. I can truly say there is nothing else quite like them anywhere else in terms of samurai games. Sadly, we never got an Empires release for Way of the Samurai 5, which came out back in 2021. So here's hoping we get one again whenever Koei decides to make Samurai Warriors 6. For really our last major standalone ninja game on this list, we move to 2009 with Mini Ninjas. To move to the opposite side of the ninja game genre, it's time to look at Mini Ninjas. This game is a cutesy rework of Tenchu Stealth Assassins aimed at a younger audience, but most likely played by a specific type of gamer who likes the over-the-top Japanese cartoon style. It feels and looks like Tenchu in that you walk around a Japanese village or Japanese scenery as obviously a ninja, unless you play as one of the secondary characters, using your tools and equipment to get things done. It is meant to be fun and easy gameplay, but it does surprisingly hold some actual ninja research within it, being closer to the stereotype of the Japanese cinema ninja that some of the games have done. You can use magic, bombs, and all sorts of cliché ninja weapons as you fight the seemingly evil samurai, a role reversal of the classic good samurai versus evil ninja of the early days, as you jump around crying ninja in the voice of a Jawa. Mini Ninjas was a breath of fresh air in a very denied genre. Alright, the final few entries on this list are the most modern samurai game releases 2020 and onward. And what is interesting is that each of these games offer experiences in both categories of the samurai and ninja genre, making them truly stand out as giving players the most well-rounded gaming experience in terms of Japanese warrior portrayals. So let's kick things off with the Ghost series, that being Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei. By 2020, there had not been a historically grounded AAA samurai game in many years, which made the hype for Ghost of Tsushima feel unreal. Being teased as early as 2017, we had to wait 3 painful years to finally play a game which, upon its release, was immediately hailed as a masterpiece. Ghost of Tsushima, when it came out, was something we had never gotten before, a heavily story-driven open-world samurai adventure set in the Kamakura period. Sure, it borrowed systems from a number of different games which had come before, namely that of Assassin's Creed, with similar stealth and combat mechanics, but it also expanded things a lot as well, such as implementing various stances, armor bonuses, and encounter mechanics. In many ways, we could also consider this a ninja game as well if we wanted to, based on all of these stealth and assassination mechanics. It really just depends how you wanted to play the game. Besides all that though, Ghost of Tsushima offered a lush and beautiful world to explore and liberate from the Mongol invaders. And while there is a lot historically inaccurate about not only the world, its presentation, and the story, at the time it was just so awesome to get a fresh new samurai game like this that a lot of those issues didn't matter back then. The game's developer, Sucker Punch Productions, has gone on record saying that they were just trying to give players the iconic image of the samurai and nothing more rooted in real history. And many players have been quick to justify that the game was just trying to pay homage to classic samurai films such as the work of Akira Kurosawa, to which the game also featured a Kurosawa mode. But personally, I have yet to actually see anyone point out which samurai films Ghost of Tsushima was explicitly trying to reference. Rather, it seems more likely they were just trying to capture an overall cinematic vibe. The interesting thing is that while Ghost of Tsushima released to near universal praise, the same cannot be said about its sequel, Ghost of Yotei, which despite having a mostly positive reception has also drawn some criticism for a number of different reasons. By no means is Ghost of Yotei a bad game, but in many ways it is more of the same as what we got in Ghost of Tsushima, while also taking other steps backward in terms of its story and historical portrayal. There is also the issue that in the 5 years between the releases of both games, 2 other great open-world samurai games would come out, which continued to expand the boundaries of the genres in ways that Ghost of Yotei failed to do. So what games were those? Well, one of them was Rise of the Ronin, which came out in 2024. Rise of the Ronin is likely the best open-world game set in the Bakumatsu period. However, like a Dragon Ishin, another great game which is not on this list does give it a run for its money. Rise of the Ronin is a bit of an open-world Souls-like game from the same studio that made the Nioh series and Ninja Gaiden. However, despite some wacky details, Rise of the Ronin does not include any supernatural elements. Instead, what it gives players is a ton of weapons to play with, armor to collect, and decisions to make. It is an incredible game even if the main story only gives you the illusion of choice by the end. Although arguments can be made, personally I feel Rise of the Ronin is the current peak of what an open-world samurai game can be. Not necessarily in terms of its world, but in terms of how you engage with the world. Look to our next entry for what I feel the best world is. Instead, Rise of the Ronin gives players so much more to do and see across Yokohama, Edo, and Kyoto, all within the midst of the boiling tension leading up to the Boshin War. As you traverse the map, you'll be constantly taking on powerful enemies, clearing out hideouts, capturing locations for your chosen faction, completing a wide variety of quests, and collecting tons and tons of loot. Although the game does have some issues, it is still likely one of the greatest examples of what a modern samurai game can be, improving on a number of elements present in Ghost of Tsushima and offering new innovations which I would love to see in games to come. I highly recommend you check out this game if you have not already. But just a word of advice, you might want to play the PS5 version. The PC port looks to still be suffering from some bugs, sadly. Lastly, we come to our final samurai and ninja game on this list, Assassin's Creed Shadows, which also came out this year in 2025. What's interesting is that the final entry on this list is also by far the most divisive. Never before has a samurai game had such contempt surrounding it in its build-up, leading to not just a massive amount of media attention, but even political attention. We could talk all day about the many controversies surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows, but that is not really what we are here to do. Instead, what we are going to do is examine the game as it stands for its representation of samurai and shinobi, which to be honest, you could argue it does fairly well. At least somewhat better than what plenty of other samurai games have done, oddly enough. For the samurai side of things, we are told the tale of Yasuke, who yes was a real historical figure, an African man who traveled to Japan with Jesuit missionaries in 1579 and later came to serve Oda Nobunaga at his height. As far as the portrayal of Nobunaga, the Oda war machine, and even samurai behavior goes, this game did a pretty great job, offering plenty of intriguing and accurate details. I actually made a whole separate video from my review of the game that goes into all the things the game got right and wrong. Of course, there is plenty of cheesy and stupid aspects we can complain about too, but I think it's fair to celebrate the details they did do well. In terms of the ninja aspects, we also get plenty of detail into the history of Iga, home to practices we commonly today associate with the shinobi. Although obviously not totally accurate to history, the Iga storyline for Naoe includes a bunch of real historical figures and the real invasion of Iga by the Oda. As far as the ninja portrayals go in the game, it is certainly not as wacky as other games have been. I might even go so far as to say it is one of the most grounded. Of course, Assassin's Creed games pride themselves on their stealth and assassination mechanics, so it's obvious plenty of the ninja aspects felt right at home within the game, which made Yasuke feel like he stood out a bit more as an oddity. Still fun to play, but not stealth-driven whatsoever. Yet what really makes this game stand out more than any other game on this list is its world. There is no better portrayal of the Sengoku period in an open-world game than what is in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Not only is the world in the game massive unlike anything I've seen before, but it is also filled with tons of real, accurately constructed and fully explorable castles, cities, villages, and religious sites. Even if a lot of the castles are built to be what their later designs would be and not what would have been there at that time when the game takes place. This is truly the height of a pre-modern Japanese world in an open-world samurai game. I think it is going to be many years before we ever see another game even come close. So, I believe it's fair to say that certainly the future is bright for fans of samurai games looking forward to games to come. Now, of course, we didn't cover every single big samurai or ninja game ever released, but at least gave you a general idea about how both genres evolved over time. So, what I want to do now is ask you, what is your favorite samurai or ninja game? Did we mention your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. I also want to thank Anthony Cummins for helping put this video together. The idea for this video was originally his, so I want to extend a thanks to him for helping get the ball rolling on a collaboration like this. I will leave a link to his channel in the description. With that said, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most interesting.